provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Making headlines at first at 9. National responsibility. President Maithripala Sirisena stresses the need for all to work towards a corruption-free society. No compromise. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe insists there won't be cutbacks on welfare expenditure.
We want to keep our expenditure, safeguard our expenditure in the social and the education sector.
Need for an overhaul. Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne reveals President's insistence on a restructuring process at the Police Department. Economic reforms. State Minister Sujiva Senasinghe echoes government's plans to move towards a production and manufacturing-based economy.
Production and manufacturing was our key goal.
Did he dodge tax? Probe underway into claims that the US president helped his parents dodge millions in taxes.
Let's nurture fresh colors seen by little eyes, guided by the light of our love. This space is for your little one. Adding flavor to World Children's Day, Tiara.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanayaka. Let's start with your local stories. President Maithripala Sirisena makes it the responsibility of all in society to lend their contribution towards eradicating corruption, theft and profligacy. The head of state made this remark addressing the National Mediation Day celebrations, which was held at the Temple Trees this morning. As I believe, you are rendering an honorary service. We use the term honorary for parliamentarians as well, who are elected by vote. However, the term is used when they are not paid salaries or wages, but an allowance is given. You are also doing an honorary service. This is a country where corruption, theft and wastage is rampant, and it cannot be easily wiped out. Anyhow, we have many things which we can be happy about. We're the owners of a great and proud history. We can also be proud on the decency of our people, their knowledge via free education, great health service, among various other things. But we must fully wipe out the likes of corruption, theft and wastage to give prominence to our good qualities. It should be done from the bottom to top, as well as from top to bottom with the assistance of all in society. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe insists that the government has no intention to follow suit with other countries by scaling back expenditure on welfare in a bid to face the prevalent global economic crisis. The Prime Minister made his views clear last evening while addressing the induction ceremony of the new President of the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka in Colombo.
When you find this global economic turmoil and as exchange rates move, what do governments do? Some governments, like in Argentina, at the worst, have to keep cutting back on their welfare expenditure. Far as this government is concerned, we want to keep our expenditure, safeguard our expenditure in the social and the education sectors, because it is essential for us that we invest in health and education to ensure that we achieve our goals of a developed nation, a healthy nation and an intelligent nation. But at the same time, we are also facing the issues of how do we guide ourselves in the coming 2-3 years. As we see, we've seen the start of a crisis globally. We haven't seen the end of it. Next month, when sanctions are imposed on Iran, what would the situation be? Remember that the exchange rate, change in exchange rate in Sri Lanka or India or another country means that you are going to pay a bit more for your drugs, some more for your foodstuff. We are also taking measures to safeguard the economy. One is short-term measures on preventing excess flow of foreign exchange out of the country. Secondly, how do we cushion the impact among the people? Thirdly, how do we in the short term increase our foreign revenue? And fourthly, how do we become an export economy? And fifth, how do you reduce our debt?
Now, Cabinet co-spokesperson Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne says that all political parties have agreed to hold the upcoming provincial council election under the previous electoral system. He, however, emphasised that it is not the stance of the unity government which prefers a mixed electoral system. Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne expressed these views at the Cabinet media briefing held today.
All parties held a meeting recently. All of them suggested that the upcoming provincial council election be held under the old electoral system and then go for a mixed electoral system in the future for the local government, provincial council and parliamentary elections. Most parties want to go for the old electoral system, but on principle we want a mixed electoral system.
අවප්‍රමාණය වීමත් එක්ක රජය තීරණය කර අර ඇමතිවරුන්ගේ වාහන පර්මිට් එක සම්බන්ධයෙන්. එහිදී සමහර පාර්ශව චෝදනා කරනවා රජයේ ඇමතිවරුන් ටික වාහන පර්මිට් එකට වාහන අරන් ඉවරයි. ඕක රජයේ සේවකයට බඩේ පහරක් වෙච්ච එකක් උනේ කියලා.
අගමැතිතුමා අරගෙනත්. The Prime Minister and the Speaker haven't used their permits. Around 8,000 state sector employees have used theirs, but around 7,000 state sector employees are yet to use permits.
I
am the Minister of Parliamentary Reforms. All parliamentarians have taken their permits. Ministers can't import vehicles for their ministries like that. It's been years since they did that. Well, of course, it's prohibited for everyone and you cannot make an exception for one person.
ඔබතුමාලා රජය ආරම්භ කළ ගමම්ම තෙල් අඩු කරා 117 දක්වා වැටුප් වැඩි කරා 10000ක් රජයේ සේවාවන් වලට මේ සිද්ධිය මේ මුදල් අර්බුදවලට හේතු උනේම නැද්ද?
There were promises made to the public despite financial troubles. The previous government was in debt more than they recorded in the budget. That's where the problem was.
මහ බැංකුවේ නියෝජ්‍ය අධිපති නන්දලාල් මහත්තයා කියවනේ අපි කරපු ප්‍රධානතම මෝඩ වැඩේ එදා වැඩි කරපු.
They of course can say anything because they only govern the economy, whereas we govern an entire country with people. We hope to make necessary cuts and provide more benefits to the public through the budget.
Cabinet co-spokesperson Minister Dr. Rajitha Senaratne also says that President Maithripala Sirisena had expressed the need to restructure the Sri Lanka Police Department. The minister made the statement in response to questions raised by journalists who inquired about media reports which say that the president had slammed the Inspector General of Police over his recent conduct.
Sri Lanka police came under intense scrutiny following the revelation of an alleged assassination plot targeting President Maithripala Sirisena and former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Inspector General of Police Pujit Jayasundara was also criticised for his conduct, with fingers also being pointed at the IGP over a 12 million rupee cheque allegedly issued in his name. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe had strongly advised the IGP over his recent behaviour, and it was in this backdrop that the Ministry of Law and Order cancelled the IGP's visit to Scotland. However, the situation seems to have taken a turn for the worse, with President Maithripala Sirisena also criticising IGP Jayasundara during the cabinet meeting yesterday.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා විසින් මේ පොලිස්පතිවරයාව සහ මුළු සමස්ත පොලිසියේම වෙනසක් වෙන්න ඕනි කියලා ප්‍රකාශයක් කරා කියලා අද මාධ්‍ය වාර්තා කරලා තිබුණා. ඇත්තට මේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා මොකක්ද කිව්වේ?
He said that the police department must be restructured completely for it to be more efficient and professional. He should be removed by the Constitutional Council, which conducted an investigation on him recently, and they should be the ones to take action on the IGP.
පොලිස්පතිතුමාට එරෙහිව යම් පරීක්ෂණයකුත් පවත්වනවා නේද මේ වෙන විට මේ අර එතුමා ඉස්කෝලයක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් ගත මුදල් ගණන් දෙනුවක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඒක නම් මන් දන්නේ නැහැ හරියට. ඔව් ඒ පරීක්ෂණ සිදු වෙනවා. ඒතර ඌට ඉල්ලාස් වෙන්න කියන එක යෝජනාව කරලා ඌ අයින් කරනවා වගේ සලස්මක් තියෙනවද? නෑ එහෙම මොනක්වත් නැහැ.
No, because we must first take a decision as to whether to remove him or not. We must consider both the IGP's behaviour as well as the reduced crime rates during his tenure. Meanwhile, Minister of Higher Education and Cultural Affairs Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa also expressed his views on the matter. We too have asked the police to take necessary legal action because as politicians we don't have the power to instruct them. This is why there is a police commission and an IGP in the country. But now we are doubtful of their actions. There will be a complete restructuring process within the police commission. Even we are thinking whether our independent police commission has become a home for the elderly who are retired. Leaders of political parties affiliated to the joint opposition held a meeting last evening at the official residence of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Speaking to media following the meeting, the former president said that he would accept the invitation extended to become the leader of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. We discussed the government's silence on the alleged conspiracy to assassinate the president, and that was the main topic of our meeting. Earlier, the government ran a smear campaign against us. We also wanted to know whether they have any other plans other than that. The conspiracy is to assassinate the president, and I think he should be more active on the case than us.
මීට වඩා ක්‍රියාකාරී වෙන්න.
ඒකවත් විපක්ෂ මන්ත්‍රීවරු යාවීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවද මේ ජනාධිපති මැතික සාකච්ඡා කරන්න ඔබතුමා?
නෑ එහෙම තාම එහෙම තීන්දුවක් ගත්තේ නෑ අපි.
සර් ඔබතුමාට මේ කොහොට්ටුවේ සමාජිකත්වයේ සභාපතිකම ගන්න කියලා ආරාධනා කරා.
ඔව් ඒකදී අපි ඒක ගන්නවා.
Meanwhile, journalists questioned General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Professor Rohana Lakshman Piyadasa, over the invitation extended by the SLPP to former President Rajapaksa to assume its leadership. He is a senior patron of our party. I don't think he will take such a decision. He loves the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. We are in a process of rebuilding the party. On the other hand, I am not bound to make clarifications over statements made by various individuals. Civil organisation Collective Public Force for the Protection of the Country had a meeting with Janata Vimukthi Peramuna today to discuss how to defeat the Sri Lanka-Singapore Free Trade Agreement. Following the meeting, spokesperson of the Government Medical Officers Association, Dr. Samantha Ananda, said the struggle against the Singapore FTA, which was limited for professionals, is now supported by a political party. Members of the civil organisation Collective Public Force for the Protection of the Country, led by the Government Medical Officers Association, arrived at the JVP headquarters in Battaramula this morning to discuss measures to be taken against the Sri Lanka-Singapore Free Trade Agreement.
So far, the professionals were fighting against this Singapore agreement because it is detrimental to the country. But we were isolated in a way that this was categorized as a professionals problem, which is not. This is a national problem. So today we were able to keep a huge step forward by getting the contribution of the JVP as a party in a policy basis, and also we were in agreement to work together wherever possible as a team to get this Singapore agreement away from this impact that it causes to the country.
This agreement is 1,000 times detrimental to the country than the central bank bond scam. This was brought under a guise. All the agreements by Ranil Wickremesinghe are hidden ones. The pact with Prabhakaran is one of those. He knew that this is detrimental to the country and brought it under a guise. This is an effort to make Sri Lanka like a weekly market in Delkanda. Therefore, this should be defeated. Now, as we enter an era where people rely heavily on the internet for information with a click of a button, differentiating between credible and non-credible sources become a difficult task, with credibility of news thrown into question, especially following the 2016 US presidential election. Calls for ethical journalism has been loud and clear. Speaking to First at 9 CEO and Director of the Ethical Journalism Network, Chris Elliott says that the spread of disinformation is a battle that media is faced with, and the time has come for journalists to restore trust.
Once upon a time, people across the world relied heavily on print media by way of newspapers to access news. With the dawn of the digital age, the appeal of print media has diminished, especially within the last decade owing to more easily accessible nature of digital news, which uses the internet as its base for dissemination. At the same time, there is growing concern that journalism on the internet, with easy access and equally convenient propagation, is failing to uphold the basic values of journalism, with recent manifestations placing the American democracy in particular at risk due to the lack of quality information. This was proved evident when experts disputed Facebook chief executive Mark Zuckerberg's claim that less than 1% of the social media network's content is fake, amid accusation of hoaxes influenced the United States elections outcome. Speaking exclusively to First at 9, CEO and Director of the Ethical Journalism Network, Chris Elliott touched on the need to address disinformation by way of ethical journalism.
There are two reasons for journalists acting ethically. I mean, the very first one is the right one. It's the moral thing to do. It's what you should do. But I think there is another reason that I think has become increasingly clear. You know, all over the world, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, there has been a collapse of the old business model of newspapers, and print is slowly ebbing away in terms of its influence as a medium. And when journalism goes online, it has to face competition with a lot of other information out there, so-called disinformation, so-called fake news. Therefore, I think that if journalists are going to restore the trust that they once had in the public's eye, they're going to have to invest in credible journalism. And to do that, I believe they've got to act ethically. Only in that way will they come up with a new business model, because why should people pay for something they don't trust? Journalists have got to think about how they can go back out there and be trusted.
Elliott went on to say that the phrase fake news has lost its gravity in the digital era.
What we have seen is a kind of debasement of the old values of telling the truth, and we see more and more, particularly around politicians but elsewhere, actually spreading stories that they know to be false. And that's disinformation. We used to call it fake news, but now everyone is talking about fake news in a way it doesn't mean anything. Certainly in the UK and in the United States, we've found politicians who, anytime they disagree with something, simply say fake news, and they treat it as a label to stop people considering it. And I think that's a mistake. I think disinformation, which is the deliberate dissemination of lies, and it's what fake news was when it first started.
Continuing with other local stories, a special operation was launched to arrest a disgruntled police officer who refused to surrender his firearm in the area of Derana today. After 2 hours, officers of the police special task force arrested the police officer in question, although shots were fired. In the meantime, Minister of Law and Order Ranjit Mandubandara says that his services, or more like the police officer's services, has been temporarily suspended and the officer will be produced before court tomorrow. A police officer attached to the Derana police station had taken a lorry transporting sand into custody on the 29th of last month. However, the officer in charge of the police station had released the lorry the next day, saying that it had a valid permit to transport sand. Disgruntled by his superior's decision, the police officer arrived at the Derana junction with a T56 firearm today. Relatives of the police officer also arrived at the scene and attempted to get him to stand down and give up the protest. However, after 2 hours, members of the police special task force arrested the police officer and the firearm, however, was discharged. Fortunately, no one was injured in the process. This story on the STF operation to apprehend the police officer at Derana is in fact trending on our YouTube page. You can recap the story by logging on to the Other Derana YouTube page.
Watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka yesterday moved to address comments made by certain quarters where it is said exchange rates of currencies in certain countries such as Ethiopia and Bangladesh have managed to stave off the troubles experienced by Sri Lanka.
Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, said the comparison is unwise given the fact Sri Lanka's elevation from a low-income nation brings about different problems along with its benefits. He also outlined the sums of funds the CBSL hope to raise this year.
The question has been asked, how is it that countries like Ethiopia and Bangladesh haven't had any pressure on their exchange rate and we have had? That is not a very good understanding of the situation, because those are low-income countries. They finance their external requirements with foreign aid. They don't go to markets and borrow. They don't have institutional investors coming in to invest in their domestic securities. It's a completely different situation. They are low-income countries not exposed to international capital markets. Sri Lanka, when we were in that situation, we also didn't have this type of pressure. We had pressure through prices, commodity prices, etc., oil prices, or our key price coming down, there were pressure. But we didn't have this kind of pressure because of our exposure to international capital markets when we were low-income countries. But we are now a low middle-income country. We graduated actually in 2008 or 9. So clearly we will be under different pressures as the country in this category.
Governor, how much are you planning to raise this year?
Billion should come in within a week or so from the China Development Bank in the form of a term loan. And really it's $1 billion at 8-year tenor and 5.25% interest, which is a remarkable terms for this current global condition. Plus, we hope to raise about 500 million, 250 million Panda, 250 million Samurai. And ISB, we need to go early because interest rates are going to go up. Hopefully about $1 billion or so, if we can raise, it'll be good.
You seem optimistic about the growth rate in the second half. So what is your sort of prediction, forecast for the 2018 growth?
First half has been 3.6. I think at the last meeting I said we could maybe get 4, for which we are going to have to grow at 4.4% in the second half. That will be a stretch, I must be honest. I see the IMF has just downgraded our growth to 3.8%. It'll be good to get 4%.
State Minister of International Trade, Sujiva Senasinghe, echoes the government's desire to move towards a production and manufacturing-based economy, saying that 25,000 acres of land have already been earmarked to set up several industrial zones. The State Minister made the remarks while addressing a seminar in Colombo yesterday, which explored plans to bring skilled foreign workers to Sri Lanka.
You can't turn a country upside down in 1 year or 2 years. But what you want to appreciate is, as a government, we made sure that we brought all the 9 commissions and we made these bodies independent. So on that foundation, we thought we'll develop the country. So creating jobs and improving their employability was our challenge. So we need to create those young leaders also. They must be given opportunity, they must be given opportunity to perform as well. Production and manufacturing was our key goal. Identified 20,000 acres of land for industrial zones. Use the GST plus and the FTAs also, we have got into certain FTAs. The reason is that Sri Lanka is too much of a small market for us. We need to go out, we need to export, and we need to, our biggest asset is our geographical position. We are made part of the One Belt initiative by China. So this is our advantage, like Singapore, like Dubai, a trading hub. But we need a leader who can take decisions, that's for sure, and take fast decisions. Whilst taking that, the main problem that I face is the labour shortage.
Former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Dr. Nalaka Godeheva, emphasises that the government must take full responsibility for the continuous depreciation of the Sri Lankan rupee and increased cost of living. He also criticised that railway fares had increased between 5 to 35%, although the government claims it is an increase of 15%.
Since the current government came to power, the rupee has devalued by 28%. This is one of the highest compared to any other country. The results of this devaluation is already seen by the people. Every imported item is going up. Fuel prices are going up. Transportation costs are going up. We saw the bus fares and the railway fares going up. The government said railway fares are increased only by 15%, but the reality is very different. In fact, it has gone up somewhere between 5% to 35%. If you look at rupee value for certain destinations, the prices have gone up from 5 rupees up to about 70 rupees. If you take average 30 to 40 rupees, that means for somebody who is traveling every month for work, the increase in cost is as high as 6,000 rupees to 7,000 rupees. This is just the beginning. People will have serious issues in terms of their income, in terms of their expenses, because of the financial crisis the government is currently facing. And for that, government cannot blame anybody else. They can only blame themselves.
Now to give you a currency update, the Sri Lankan rupee touched its all-time low of 170 rupees and 94 cents per US dollar, surpassing its previous low of 169 rupees and 40 cents hit on Friday on importer demand for the greenback and foreign selling in government securities. The central bank surprised financial markets yesterday by leaving its key policy rates unchanged despite heavy pressure on the rupee and foreign outflows from government securities. The central bank said it purchased $4 million from the market on the previous day, but it has sold a net $184 million to the market so far this year to defend the currency. The rupee weakened 0.4% this month after it fell 4.7% in September against the dollar, with it dropping 1.2% in the previous month. The rupee's decline so far this year is 10.63%. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other currencies around the world. Time to look at news from around the world. The New York State Tax Department has confirmed that investigations are underway into claims made by New York Times that President Donald Trump helped his parents dodge millions of dollars in taxes. The revelation could not hold the US president back as he mocked the testimony of Christine Ford against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh at a rally in Mississippi. He said that accuser Ford remembers virtually nothing about the alleged incident except the fact that she had a beer. US President Donald Trump says allegations of sexual misconduct against his US Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh have emerged because there was attempts to destroy Judge Kavanaugh since the very first second he was announced.
36 years ago, this happened. I had one beer, right? I had one beer. Well, do you think it was? Nope, it was one beer. Oh, good. How did you get home? I don't remember. How'd you get there? I don't remember. Where is the place? I don't remember. How many years ago was it? I don't know. What neighborhood was it in? I don't know. Where's the house? I don't know. Upstairs, downstairs, where was it? I don't know. But I had one beer. That's the only thing I remember. And a man's life is in tatters. A man's life is shattered. They destroy people. They want to destroy people. These are really evil people.
In another development, the New York State Tax Department has confirmed it is investigating claims by the New York Times that President Trump helped his parents dodge millions of dollars in taxes. The paper has alleged that the president was involved in dubious tax schemes during the 1990s, including instances of outright fraud. White House spokesperson Sarah Sanders called the story a misleading attack. She said the transactions were signed off by the IRS many decades ago. Now let's take a look at what other emerging stories are making news across the world. The number of people known to have died in Friday's earthquake and tsunami in Indonesia has risen to 1,347. The death toll jumped yesterday from a previously confirmed figure of 844. A rare scene of 3 bridge whales foraging together were captured by a drone camera of a research team in South China's Guangxi-Zhuang Autonomous Region last week. Footage from the drone camera showed that 3 bridge whales closely cooperated with each other to forage. Experts also found a healed wound on the back of the largest whale, which they believe to have been caused by either a shark bite or crash against a hard surface.
The crew of a Spanish tuna fishing vessel have been arrested off the coast of Gabon for illegally catching sharks without the proper license and stripping them off their fins. The Senegalese-flagged vessel Vima was found carrying about 2 tons of sharks and shark fins, mostly of blue sharks, a species classified as near threatened by the International Union for Conservation of Nature.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Time for sports. The chief of the International Cricket Council's Anti-Corruption Unit has conveyed to Minister of Sports Faisal Mustafa that the country's cricket is at a critical state. Now, General Manager of the ICC Anti-Corruption Unit, Alex Marshall, says a team is in Sri Lanka to probe serious allegations of corruption, but it does not relate to the series with England about to get underway. The International Cricket Council has confirmed that representatives of its anti-corruption unit are in Sri Lanka as part of ongoing investigations into serious allegations of corruption in cricket in the country. General Manager of the ICC Anti-Corruption Unit, Alex Marshall, said inquiries are continuing and confirmed that the ICC, at Sri Lanka's request, have provided a detailed briefing to the Sri Lankan President, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Sports. He said that the ICC is receiving full support from the competent authority currently in place at Sri Lanka Cricket, whilst elections for the SLC board are pending. General Manager of the ICC Anti-Corruption Unit moved to make it clear that the investigations have been underway for a considerable time and do not relate to the series about to start in Sri Lanka. He added that he will be briefing both teams over the coming days to ensure they remain alert to risks from would-be corruptors. In the meantime, Minister of Sports Faisal Mustafa also commented on the matter during a media briefing held today.
ICC anti-corruption එකේ ප්‍රධානිය මාව ඇවිල්ලා හම්බුණා.
The chief of the anti-corruption unit of the ICC met me and said that Sri Lanka's situation is dangerous compared to other 12 cricketing nations. I made a request to send in officials from the anti-corruption unit to train Sri Lankan officials. I also asked their officials to stay behind for about 6 months and help strengthen our legal framework.
Corruption unit එක ශක්තිමත් කරන්න අපට උදව් කරන්න.
Anti-corruption එකේ සාකාවක් මෙහි ස්ථාපිත කරන්න යෝජනා කරලා තියෙනවද ඒ අය?
ඒ අය අපට සහයෝගය දෙන්න.
No, they promised to assist us if we make such a request. We are planning to do so. We will do everything and amend the match-fixing law, making it an offence.
ඇටියට ඇතුළත් කරන්න අපි වැඩ කටයුතු කරනවා.
Looking at your weather forecast for the next 24 hours, given the low atmospheric disturbance in the vicinity of Sri Lanka, temperatures are going to be lower than usual, with the highest expected in the Batiklo district. The lowest temperature of 20 degrees Celsius can be expected from the central hills. Moving on to the rain forecast, showers or thunder showers are expected in all districts of the island tonight as well as tomorrow. Many coastal districts in the country, meanwhile, should brace for strong winds. The Disaster Management Centre warns of lightning activities, so it would be wise to be vigilant on the prevailing weather situation over the next few days. Now here's your city by city forecast. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. And before we go, we'd like to take you around Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka has made a name for itself as one of the most exciting tourist destinations in the world and being loved equally as much for it. The island nation is the proud owner of a unique cultural heritage which boasts a diverse population, treasuring its core ethnicities spanning across hundreds of centuries. The country's landscape is often described as mesmerizing and breathtaking. Tonight, we'll leave you with a glimpse into everyday lives of Sri Lankans. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.